Hey there, welcome to the video. Today we're going to be talking all about resumes. We'll walk through how employers think and what it's like to be on the other side of the table. We'll talk through some common resume deal breakers that you'll need to avoid, and we'll share our best tips to help make sure that you stand out and secure your next interview. We'll go through some concrete examples, improving the resumes along the way, and we'll take some questions from the audience as this was part of a live session during Maven Analytics January Jumpstart event. It was a really great event. We got lots of positive feedback, so we wanted to share this with you as well here. Let's get into it. All of the content today that's about having an incredible resume and screaming data when an employer looks at you on paper, this is going to be available inside of that Launching Your Data Career course, which you guys will have access to throughout the month of January. So I'd love for everybody to be able to take a look at that and just try to utilize it as much as possible. And again, in that course, you're going to cover topics like finding your path, writing a strong resume, which what we're covering today, marketing yourself on LinkedIn, building a project portfolio, networking and applying for jobs, acing the analyst interview, and then at the end we have this career launch checklist to really try to have you get this framework that you can just follow in order to get yourself ready for the big show of applying to job opportunities. So let's get into resume writing, and the biggest thing to understand is just, why is resume writing so hard for people at first? And one is it's not really taught very well in school, at least in my experience. I certainly didn't learn it the easy way in school. I wish I did. I learned it by kind of getting knocked around a few times on the job and having people not really like my resume at first. The other piece that I see a lot is people trying to use generic templates and really forcing their experience into a template that isn't best suited for them. And that's something we'll talk again. So we'll talk about a lot more. And then the last piece is just, you don't know how employers think until you've sat on the other side of the table hiring people. You don't understand what people are looking for. What are the things that make somebody really stand out? What are the things that are kind of like these big deal breakers, the big no-nos that can scare folks off. So these are things that we're going to try to help with today and in the Thursday session. That's what you can expect kind of as some of the things to talk about. So some of the things that I think are just, I really want everyone to take away from understanding resumes is that 75% of qualified applicants for jobs have been rejected by what's called the applicant tracking system. This is something that we're going to have a deeper session on, but basically think of it this way. Recruiters and hiring managers, they're kind of overwhelmed. And so they use software, what's collectively known as the applicant tracking systems, in order to sort of filter out which are the resumes that they should even read, right? And it sounds hard to think you're going to submit your resume and somebody's not going to read it, but I'm going to tell you the reality, and that is the reality. And what I want to help you with is to understand the reality and then navigate it in the best possible way. So we're going to talk about the applicant tracking system, how you can make sure you don't fall into that group where you're not even getting reviewed by a potential employer because you're getting filtered out because you've done things wrong that don't satisfy what the ATS is looking for. And then this is another one that I think is really hard for a lot of folks to deal with is you've got about 7 seconds to really make yourself stand out on a resume, or 6 seconds. I don't know why I said 7 there, but we use the quote for 6 seconds. And honestly, it might even be shorter. And we're going to do an exercise momentarily where I'll put a resume up on the screen and I'll give you 6 seconds. And I want you to try and gather as much as you can from that resume. I think it's a really important exercise so that you can just kind of understand what you're up against, because it's a ridiculously short amount of time. And so you need to be extremely deliberate with how you tackle that problem. So I want everybody to just spend the next 6 seconds looking at this and try to process everything that you can about this resume on the next slide. What did people think about that 6 second exercise? Did you get anything out of it? Probably not, right? Did it seem really fast? Did you get a lot? Yeah, no, right? So yeah, sorry guys. I know it's a little bit smaller than I would have in tier, but so basically, hopefully you guys got the point that 6 seconds is like absolutely nothing. And so you really need to be extremely smart about the way that you present some of your stuff. We'll talk about the 6 second rule, how you combat that. How do the folks that look good within 6 seconds, how do they move into that next phase where somebody actually spends more? So we'll definitely work on that a little bit. So next, I want to talk about some of the most common resume deal breakers, and this is from a poll. It's a few years old here, but I think it's still very, very valid. So the number one thing that's a resume deal breaker is having typos and bad grammar. The next piece is having an unprofessional email. So something weird at gmail.com that would make people think that you're kind of a goofball. The next piece is not really having quantifiable results, which that one can be a little harder for entry-level folks to tackle, but it's good to know that that's on radar. And then the fourth one that I think we'll try to focus on is just having long paragraphs of text. So sometimes people think like more is better on a resume, but really it's not. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, how kind of putting too much on the page will often really distract from the truly amazing things that you have, right? Anytime you have fluff or what we'll call filler, it's just an opportunity to have somebody miss your really, really good stuff. So I always advocate for really cutting things down and having, what you could call a minimal resume template. So here we're going to go through a case study, and we're going to walk through a junior data analyst. She's been working there for about 2 years, and she is now applying for a new role. She's got a template from a friend, and she needs our help making it stronger. So we're going to help her try to critique that resume in order to help her land that job and look good. So we're going to review 7 critical resume tips, which I would encourage you all to think about when you're working on your own resumes. We're going to talk about how an employer might review each of the components of the resume. And then we will also talk about cover letters at the end. I saw a couple questions about cover letters. So Rachel, and I know there was one before. So the short of it is, it's a great idea. It really doesn't hurt, especially if you're interested in kind of a more targeted approach rather than a spray and pray job application, which I would recommend. So here's the first the first tip that we're going to walk folks through is try to make sure that you're looking professional and you can make a great impression. And some of the things that can really kill that is if you've got typos, if you've got spelling errors, or if you've got grammatical mistakes. It's just such a bad way to make your first impression with an employer, to look like somebody who didn't care enough to review it, to have somebody else review it. And it's something that's totally within your control. So I've certainly been guilty of this in the past, of kind of being a little too fast and sloppy, but take your time, make sure you don't have any of those things. The next one is just kind of having clear and consistent formatting so that it's really easy to read. You don't have to be a designer. You don't have to have like something necessarily that you would call beautiful, but it should be clean. It should be consistent. That's going to be really important. Jonathan, just I'm trying to scan the questions here. I love to bold certain things, and we'll show some examples of that. I think that absolutely can help make things stand out, and we'll have examples of that in a minute. And then the next piece is, let's try to use specific and concise language. Try to talk like a professional. Don't be too relaxed, too informal on a resume. Some of the things that can really get you whacked and get you into the do not hire pool are doing weird things like having an unprofessional email address. I would just always encourage you to have like first name, last name at gmail.com, something like that. Don't have like a weird email address that's like an overshare or anything like that. I've seen some weird ones come through. It can get you in trouble. Also, no need to include photos or information about your age or your gender or anything like that. It may not matter at all, but it does run the risk of some people reviewing your resume. You're not going to win anyone over with that information, but it might seem like an overshare. So I would be careful of that. I know in certain countries, that is a little different. It is customary to put on a picture of yourself. Sometimes I've seen that in a few other countries, but at least in the US and most of the world, it's I would encourage avoiding that. So let's go through this example, and it's killing me that we don't have the animation, because I would have loved to have you guys think about this a little bit, but basically we've got an example on the left, and we have got an improved example on the right, just to try to make some of these points a little bit more concrete for you. So we've got here the email that she used here is Larry Bird's next wife at hotmail.com. Probably inappropriate, who knows if that totally feels like an overshare, right? So just replace it with leslie.nope at gmail.com is a much better way to do it. The next piece we've got here is just kind of like a simple, oh yeah, you guys are probably having trouble reading this on some screens, I'm sure. Yeah, let me see if I can probably zoom this a little bit. That's a good point. Sorry about that. Let's see if this will help a little bit. Yeah, thanks, Maxwell. I was having trouble with the presentation mode. It wasn't actually working with the event software, unfortunately. So yeah, so hopefully this will work a little bit better for you guys. Does this seem a little bit better? All right. Awesome. Oh, thank you, Stefan. Appreciate it. The next piece is just a little typo, as simple as things I'm good at writing and misspelled writing. So that's certainly something that is going to make you look a little foolish here. So get this format back. I'll try to zoom in and out and make this work for you guys. Technical difficulties today. So the next piece, and this is one I want to jump into quite a bit, and that's using an applicant tracking system. And so the best way to think about this is that your resume, before it gets seen by a human, it's going to be searched by a computer that is looking for keywords, basically. And so a person will set up their search, and they'll say, hey, I want an analyst that's good at Tableau and SQL and maybe has 2 years of experience. And there's software that will scan these resumes and help identify ones that actually fit really well with that criteria. So you'll want to make sure that you sort of do a couple of things, and we'll walk through some examples here. The things that I really want you to focus on is making sure you understand the job descriptions and be thoughtful about what you think some of the top keywords would be. And the other thing that I want you to do is make sure you're using standard headings like experience, work experience, educations that the system is going to pick up on, is going to be able to correctly classify for you. So if you try to get too cute with some of these things, it may misinterpret what's on the resume, and that can sometimes get you into trouble. So things that I think you shouldn't do are just using kind of clever or non-traditional section headings, including like fancy tables, columns, or graphics. At least you could do something like that. I think it's probably overkill, but what's really important there is you don't rely on those graphics or the tables and columns, because if anything's an image, it's very likely not going to be processed by the ATS. So if you think you're communicating something maybe you're not in the software's eyes, and that can get you into trouble, and you could get kicked out before it actually gets to a person. So here again, I'm going to try to get you guys into this example. And basically the example that I just want to show you here in terms of understanding the ATS is these are concrete examples of just bad ways to handle your section headers. It's the only thing that's going to happen is it's going to trip up the system. So instead of where I studied, things I'm good at, where I've worked, just stick to traditional things like education, skills, and experience, and you'll go a lot further there in terms of the ATS. So the next piece I want to talk about here is, and this one is, it's really kind of one of the biggest principles that I would think folks should focus on, and that's like if you look at your resume and you see anything on the page that doesn't really sell you for that job, and you can't objectively say that, hey, this thing is helping me look better for that specific job, get it off of the resume. The resume does not need to be a list of everything that you've ever done. It is a marketing tool which you are trying to present yourself in the best possible light. So like, yeah, Leela's laughing at having babysitting on a resume. There's a lot of things that we may have done in our younger pre-professional lives that just have absolutely nothing to do with the job that we're going for now in a data or other professional setting. And so, and there's some cases in which those pre-professional jobs might have some good merit and might actually help sell you, but you should be asking that question, right? So every part of your resume, you need to think about it as an opportunity to sell yourself, and anything that feels like filler or is potentially distracting from your best points, get it out of there, because again, you have got 6 seconds to impress someone. And if you have things on there like babysitting or like too much text that isn't selling, they are going to pass on reading the rest of it before they get to your best stuff. So I think that's really important. Yeah. So Richard, is the ATS open and free to use for job applicants? So the ATS, it's not actually one piece of software. We're sort of talking collectively about a number of pieces of software. Is there anything that you could kind of run through? I bet there is. To be honest, I don't know off the top of my head the answer to that question, but yeah, ChatGPT might actually be pretty good, to ask it some questions. Personally, I think it's like what I would recommend there is for the ATS is think about, okay, if you're the hiring manager, what do you think are the criteria for this job? And then are the words that you would potentially try to search for, are those showing up on the resume? To me, I think that is the best framework. It's the best way to really think about it. I wouldn't overly rely on any other system to tell you, but stick to a Word document or a PDF. Don't use images or things that any of these software systems couldn't actually process. So that would be my recommendation. All right, so now we've got a little concrete example on wasting space. So here is just something, an example that we actually do see kind of often. We've got Leslie here who's typed in, I've graduated in 4 years from Indiana University at Bloomington, earned a history degree from the School of Environmental and Public Affairs. Like that is just, that's like a lot of text that doesn't really add any additional value. Just delete that whole block, right? Unless for some reason you think it's incredibly valuable, you could make that much more concise. In here, because we're talking about a senior analyst job, there's certain things in here: PowerPoint writing, managing the Parks Department budget, babysitting, and Word, that just are not super applicable to an analyst role. I would again recommend cutting those out. And what you see what you see here, if we go over to the right, so versus if just kind of trying to contrast these two for you guys. So here it's kind of a big jumble of things where some of the skills are useful and valuable on the job. Some of the things don't really apply. And then here, when we cut it down, it just gets a lot better. It's working with databases, report creation, Excel, Microsoft Power BI, Google Analytics, right? Like all of those skills are really valuable. And it's weird as a hiring manager to have to sort of sift through a bunch of things that are useful and some of the things that are not. The next piece that we have down here, we've got some pretty some irrelevant experience at the very bottom. And so we have here a babysitting service for things like that, like babysitting, lifeguard, restaurant server. That one, the restaurant server could potentially go both ways depending on the specific type of the role. If you think you can sell it as like client relations type work, customer service, then it actually could be really valuable, but you should always be asking that question. So babysitting, anything totally not relevant, get it out of there. It absolutely does not make sense. And then this one here, kind of managing the the Department of Parks and Recreation, we've got just a bullet point here that doesn't really help. So I would recommend getting that off as well. So let me try to scan comments actually a little bit, just see. I think there might be some good questions in here that I should stop on, and I've been mostly in the presentation. So yeah, so there's some good questions about like balancing soft and leadership skills that might not have anything to do with analytics. There was a couple others that are, using technical skills. Yeah, so it's tricky. It's like, I definitely really like getting a technical skills and really focusing on those skills. You'll see people put like leadership or other things like that. It's a little harder. As a hiring manager, you see like a brand new hire write something like leadership or teamwork on a page, and while it's good and they are really really useful skills, it's a little harder on the hiring manager side to think like, okay, they're talking about leadership as a 20-year-old, 22-year-old. You might sort of get a little bit of an eye roll, but I think it depends on the role. Like if you're kind of later in career, what I would recommend is like, instead of talking to those specific skills, it's probably better to talk about some of the specific experiences. Like if you're talking about leadership, it's, I've managed this team and I've led these initiatives, things like that. So that's probably how I would tackle those ones. And yeah, it looks like Chris has got me in the comments. So I think I'm gonna walk you through some of this stuff here. So the next piece is just making sure you're being really descriptive with your language. And the example that we have here is, you could say I performed data analysis. It's not very good. We see that all the time. A better example would be I analyzed paid marketing campaign data to improve the business. And then an even better example would be I use SQL, Power BI, and search engine reporting tools to analyze and optimize paid marketing campaigns and increase sales by 20%. So you can kind of see in this last one, you actually really have a good picture of what the person worked on, both like the specific tools, the business problem that they were working on, and even kind of the impact that they were able to create. So I think that's really important. And so let's go into just some concrete examples about this one. So I'll make this even a little bit bigger. So here under the skills section, we've got working with databases, report creation, Excel, Microsoft Power BI, Google Analytics, and I've absolutely had things like this on my own resume when I was younger. What I recommend here is kind of updating those things to be just a little bit more descriptive of what you're actually doing. So talking about SQL querying and database management, data visualization using Microsoft Excel and Power BI, Google Analytics implementation and website reporting. So it's just a little bit more clarity around painting a picture of what the person actually did, and I think that's really, really important. The next piece we have here is looking at just some kind of generic descriptions here. Analyze data to find business insights, created reports to present to stakeholders at this Eli Lilly position. We're going to make that a little more descriptive and say, use SQL database to analyze customer and marketing data to improve the performance of marketing campaigns by 30%. It's just a little bit more descriptive. And implemented Google Analytics on Eli Lilly's new product website. So instead of created reports and analyzed data, and again, just pretty important to try to be conscious of that. So next one here, this is another one that's really important, and it goes back to that 6-second rule. Prioritize your best selling points. And so what I mean by that is assume that only the top quarter of your resume might get read when a human being is looking at it, especially if it's not your best stuff. If you've got your best skills at the bottom, absolutely no one is going to read them. If you've got fluff in the top quarter, they're going to give up and they're going to just say, oh, this person isn't a good fit. So basically what I want everyone to do is think about what are the things that sell you absolutely the best, and make sure that those are at the top of the page, and basically prioritize the entire page with that in mind. And we'll walk through an example here. So first, and this is kind of like a pretty common thing that we see a lot of people do, is have an education section up near the very top. If you think that somebody reading your education will go, wow, this person's amazing. Like if you went to Harvard, if you went to MIT, Stanford, that might make sense. If you think that you have basically education that outweighs the value of your technical skills or outweighs the value of your experience, then it could go to the top. But basically, I would in almost every case, I would recommend having that education section pushed down. A hiring manager is not super interested in seeing that. It's certainly not going to be the thing that they're not going to say, oh, wow, Leslie went to Indiana University and studied history. Let's make sure we keep reading this resume for a data analyst role. So that's why I would say move that to the bottom. The other piece we have here is Leslie talking about herself as a junior data analyst. I take some poetic license here and just talk about yourself in a way that that you think is going to sell you pretty well. So all I'm advocating for here is just moving education to the bottom and then removing that junior word and making it talking about herself as a data analyst. So next piece, and this one is less about necessarily working to change anything about the resume or about your background, but really just kind of understanding yourself. And it's really important, I think, for everyone to do kind of a red flag analysis of yourself. Do you think there is anything that would give employers concern? And some of these things you might not be able to address, but you should be aware of them, and you should be able to have stories that you are you're prepared with, so that you can talk to these and that you can just be ready and not be caught off guard. So some of the most common red flags that employers might get scared off by, if somebody's a really frequent job hopper, jumping around, multiple times every year, there's, maybe there is a good reason for that. But as a hiring manager, my concern is if this person's had 5 jobs in 2 years, by the time I train them, I'm pretty sure that they're already going to be gone, right? And there's either they are somebody who gets bored and doesn't stick around, or maybe that person is really hard to work with. So if you have that on your resume, you may want to think, do you really want to have all those things on the resume? But just be really conscious of how that looks. Another piece is just having major employment gaps, and this one is really hard. Some folks have unemployment gaps for reasons like they were taking care of a sick family member, or they maybe themselves got sick, or they took time off to do some amazing travel or something like that. And so those are actually, in my opinion, those are really good reasons to have employment gaps. The challenge and the thing that that employers are going to potentially be nervous about, if you have like a lot of time off where you're not working and you don't have a good story for it, the assumption is that one of two things are true. You are maybe like lazy and not motivated to get a job, or maybe you have been motivated, but there is just something so wrong with you that all other employers have passed on you. And I know for anybody who has an employment gap, I know that probably sounds harsh, but my goal here is to tell you the truth and tell you what people are actually thinking on the hiring manager side, and not to sugarcoat things for you. I want to give you the reality and the way that things actually are, and then help you work within them. So if you have major employment gaps, sometimes I've even had people say that they put on like, hey, these 2 years I was taking care of my sick father or something like that, right? Just so that it's, when an employer is reviewing the resume, they don't jump to their own conclusions. And to me, if I were seeing something like that, I would certainly not penalize somebody for having 2 years off to take care of a sick father. I would, that's actually a positive for their character, in my opinion. But just having a blank space can definitely be a little bit scary. Then the next one is kind of like no experience, irrelevant background, kind of like a perfect fit for another role. This is, and I think there's a few different questions in here, like changing careers, that I think kind of fit here as well. But so I think one of the challenging things, because we deal with a lot of career switchers, is like, let's say you've had a 10-year sales career, and if everything about your resume screams sales, then I'm going to read it and I'm going to say, well, wait a minute, this is a data analyst role. This person is a salesperson, right? And so it's not to say that a person can't make a change from sales to data analysis. Of course, people do. But what I would say is, make sure to accentuate the things that are data analysty about your experience. Like, so in that case, I would definitely recommend put the technical skills at the very top. Before you start talking about all your sales experience, talk about your SQL skills, your Python skills. Like, use the technical skills section at the very top to hook them. Maybe if you've done like a boot camp or something like that, put that there as kind of a data analysis education. Put a link to your data analyst profile, your portfolios of projects. Don't lead with all this sales experience and then, hey, I've got some data skills at the very bottom, because that's definitely going to be pretty tough. So the order really, really matters there. Yeah, and then, oh man, so many good questions here. I'm trying to think through how to tackle this in the remaining 14 minutes. let me go through just the last piece here, and I won't get through the total presentation, but I do want to go through through one more. And basically, this tip here is just to don't just copy and paste like a one size fits all template. I think that's one of the things that I think has come up a little bit as I've been talking through some of these examples. But basically, you want to really think about yourself. Think about what are the things that are really good about me. What are the things that a hiring manager might be less excited about? And if you are going to include those things, make sure they're prioritized lower. And yeah, it's just, I think that's a big piece that folks, like, they get a resume template and they say, okay, well, hey, this template has education and then experience and then skills at the bottom. And it just doesn't, it doesn't have to be that way. So I think that's probably as far as I'm going to run through the specific presentation, because we've got about 12 minutes left. I want to do a couple of things for you guys. I want to make sure that you guys have the links to to register for the next session. So let me pull that up, and you'll also get this in the email at the end of the session. Anyone who has participated today will get this link via email, but I want to make sure that it's here. And you'll get also a link for our type form so you can actually submit your resume if you want us to give you feedback on Thursday. Again, I think we answered at the beginning of the session, but you don't have to necessarily submit your resume. We'd love to get as many as we possibly can, and we'll go through as many as we can. So, so for the Thursday session, down here in the comments, this is the registration. So that's not published anywhere. Please don't publish it anywhere. We really want this to be just for the folks who are on this session. We're trying to have it be kind of a small, intimate thing where we can actually work on anybody's resumes who does want us to. And then the next one that I want to show you is the type form for the private event. So this is where you will actually submit your resume via this form. So if you want to have us review your resume, submit it there via, ideally a Word doc is best, so that I could actually get in there and make edits pretty easily. If it's in a PDF, that's a little more challenging. So Word doc is ideal. If you can't do a Word doc, a PDF is fine, but this is where you'll submit your resume, and we will actually go through and kind of beat it up and try to give you feedback and make it better, both in some review before the session on Thursday and in the session. So with that said, I'm going to try to run through questions. Wow, there was a ton of people here in the session, so I definitely could not keep up with all the questions as we were going through this. But I'm gonna try to go through as many of these questions here. So I know there was some in the comments. I'm going to try to just run through a bunch of these. So Chelsea, how should you display your projects on a resume? So personally, I really like having a portfolio hosted somewhere and then have a link to that portfolio. And what I would also recommend is, if you are doing that, try to have that link near the very top of your resume, because as a hiring manager, I would love to see that. As it doesn't matter what your background is, like if you've had some analytics experience, if you haven't, if you're that salesperson that we talked about that's trying to transition, if one of the first things that I see is linked to my data analyst project portfolio, and I'm at all interested in you, I'm getting more interested, and I am definitely clicking that link, right? I'm going to check out these projects, because to me, it's like anybody can say on a resume, I'm good at SQL, I'm good at data visualization, but that's just telling me. And then the portfolio is showing me, right? So, so I love that. I think put it at the top if you can, and I'll try to keep going through these. See if I can. I'm going to try to answer these based on upvotes at this point. So I just switched the view here for me. So if you have questions you want answered, I'm going to try to go through the top upvotes. Yeah, it looks like Chris already tackled a bunch of these actually, so that's great. Let's see. Questions about LD profile and connections. Understand how to build my connections. The persons who interest me are closed to connection. Yeah. So let me pull this, answer this one. Wait, why doesn't it let me? Trying to answer this question for you guys and put it on the screen. But yeah, same thing. I'm not really sure. But yeah, there's a question from Nina about how can I, yeah, I'm wishing that this one I could pull up so everybody could see it. How can I build connections? People who are interesting to me are closed to connection. So what I would recommend is basically try to build a relationship. So I think, Nina, you're probably talking about people on LinkedIn that are kind of active in the data community. You can tell that they know what they're doing. They're putting out content to try to help people, and you'd like to be connected to those people. And that those are absolutely like kind of the right people you want to be connected with. Some of them might just accept every connection. Others might not. But what I would recommend is if they're out there active, start contributing. Like they're putting posts out there, engage with them, talk to them. That's what they're doing. They're trying to build community with that. And that's a great way to just start doing that. Comment on posts, ask a question, add a little bit. If you just come out and you say, hey, like, I just want to hit connect. Like, I don't do that. I don't respond. I don't connect with anyone who I don't know. If I look at my LinkedIn, it's probably at like 500 or 1,000 connection requests from people I don't know. And it's not something that I do. It's not something that a lot of folks do. But if I see a connection request from somebody who's like, hey, I've been seeing this content. I joined a webinar. It was really good, and they look familiar to me. Then certainly I would, right? And again, like I know it kind of sounds harsh, but again, my job is to give you the reality and explain to you how things really are, and then navigate within that framework. So that's what I would recommend. Oh yeah, Chris, you're rocking these questions. Thank you so much as I'm catching up here. Let's see. Yeah, so we got here. This is a tough one. So this is from Kavita. I've been on a career gap of about 5 years as working on a music passion. Should you add to the resume? And before the gap, I was not working in the data field. Yeah. So I think one, that just know that the 5-year gap is going to be a red flag. You're going to need to figure out how to talk about that. Somebody pursuing a passion, I don't think that's something that should be held against you. So I think having the ability to talk about that experience in a positive way would really be, it would be my recommendation. I would also not lead with your experience. Like I would definitely try to lead with the project portfolio. I would lead with technical skills, then have the experience underneath, and be ready to talk about that, the career transition, be ready to talk about how you are, you were really passionate about this and that's why you pursued it. And now, your passion has shifted and you're really interested in data analysis. And I think you can totally navigate that. The other piece that I know somebody had asked in a question before is talking about like having a career objective session. That would be an interesting place too, to kind of a couple sentences sort of explaining that. I don't know that I would go too wild with explaining that, but a little bit of like, hey, I'm excited about this and I'm transitioning is probably a good idea. Yeah, how many certifications can we put on a resume? I mean, I think the certifications are pretty good. I would, how many? I don't know if you've done a lot of stuff. It's definitely a good way to show that you've been pretty passionate. Personally, I personally weigh the portfolio more heavily just because I want to see your actual work. But certifications are definitely awesome to have on there to talk about, especially like well-known ones. Things like like the MO201 or what's now the PL300 for Power BI, things that or Tableau certification. For SQL, there's not really like a universal standard. The challenge with SQL is a couple things. There's all these different flavors of SQL, and so there's various tests of their own, and most of the SQL certifications historically have been very database administrator and data engineer focused, and less on the data analyst side. So, and actually, that's a good point. We should share the Maven Analytics project showcase, which is another good solution for creating a project profile. So I just linked here to the Maven Analytics project showcase, where you can build a portfolio of your projects entirely for free. You just have to have a free Maven Analytics account. Again, just like the free course access this month, you don't need to put in a credit card. You don't have to have a paid subscription. And this one is actually always entirely free. So check that out. It's a great free place to host your work. Yeah. So George, I'll take this as the last question. What should be the ordering in the resume? So it depends. It depends on you, right? For a lot of folks, skills should be really rated highly. A project summary should probably be rated really highly. If you think your education is the most impressive thing about you, then it could be rated highly, but my feedback is it probably is not. Like the skills that you've been working on, the projects that you've been working on are probably much more impressive to a potential hiring manager. So I would put those at the top. But really it's like, there's no one formula that I would prescribe. It's more of the framework of saying, what's the thing that sells me the best, get it to the top, and make sure it's the first thing that somebody reads. If you enjoyed this session and you want more live sessions from Maven Analytics, check out mavenanalytics.io/January Jumpstart. We've got a bunch of free events with our instructors. We're having a lot of fun with these. The upcoming events are a LinkedIn profile session, a data analyst project portfolio session, and finally a session on nailing the analyst interview. They're all free. You can register for them, and I hope that we'll see you there. Thanks.